Good afternoon again. For those of you that just joined, my name is Daryl Fleary. I'm a product manager with Trivantis. And today we're going to talk to you about what's new in Lectora 16. As you probably saw in your email and saw the various announcements and things on our website, we are super excited to have released yesterday Lectora 16 on the desktop, which includes our responsive course design solution. For those of you that may also be Lectora Online users, you probably recall that we released Lectora Online at the beginning of November that also included responsive design. And at that time, I did a presentation and kind of showed what was new in Lectora Online, including responsive design. Many of those same features are present here in Lectora 16 for the desktop as well. So we'll go over those today and just kind of let you know everything that's in the release. Now, for those of you that are wondering, if you are current on your maintenance, then there is no cost to upgrading to Lectora 16 and getting our responsive design solution. So just keep that in mind. And there's an upgrade process. You'll get the message and so forth through the application, and also you can go out to the website and do the upgrade there. So it was released yesterday. We already are hearing good things about it, so I'm super excited to tell you about it today. So here are the things that I'm going to cover. And as you can see, it's quite a lot. So I'll start off by talking about responsive course design, since that is the primary feature in this new release. And by the way, this is Lectora Inspire and Lectora Publisher, if you're wondering. So we're going to cover a lot of the things that are in responsive course design. We'll talk about inheritance and object scaling and creating overrides and customizing your views and all those sorts of things. Then also in Lectora 16, we have new status condition relationships. And we'll talk about those as well. On the upper right of my page, you see that there's some new things with the progress bar, step progress bar action. We'll take a look at that. And then we'll look at some of the other goodies that are also in Lectora 16, such as compatibility with Lectora Online. We'll look at some of the learning resources that are new, and also talk a brief minute about the updated Inspire tools. Now, as I go into all of this, and for your future reference, you'll notice the link here I put at the bottom of the page. Let me go ahead and click that, open that up for you. And that takes you to our website, to the What's New page for Lectora 16. Let me get this out of the way. And here on the page, you can see a lot of things about the release, what's happening in the release, see some of the videos and Inspiration Wednesday sessions and things that have already been produced for it, as well as get to a list of all the features that are in Lectora 16. And again, I'll be going over most of these in this session today. So that's there for you. Just want to make sure you have that as a reference, and we'll circle back to that in a little bit later. So let's jump right in then and start talking about responsive course design in Lectora 16. So the idea behind responsive course design, we are becoming more and more of a mobile-centric learning world. People are taking learning on the desktop as always, but they're also consuming our content on their tablets and on their smartphones. And so we need a way to develop our learning such that it can be consumed on whatever device the user is using at the time they're using it. Well, right now, Lectora, I shouldn't say right now, prior to Lectora 16, Lectora would publish and run fine on tablets and smartphones. However, it wasn't responsive. You just got a smaller version of the desktop for the device that you were on. With responsive design, this allows you to then say, I don't need to have my desktop view represented on all these devices. I want to be able to customize it slightly in the other views in order to make it look appropriate, perhaps leaving out some content or changing some content, rearranging content, etc., to make it appropriate for that smaller device. So that's what responsive course design is going to do. And by the way, I see a message here, a question in the chat. When will Lectora Online 3 be launched in the Netherlands? That's a great question. And for all of our people that are behind the firewall customers that have their own installation of Lectora Online, you should be getting some information about that very shortly. I think later this week, if not next week. So thank you for that question, Vincent. All right, so when you create a responsive course design title, the interface for Lectora is going to look exactly like it always has, with one exception. And that is, you'll see this new responsive course design bar. at the top, right in your edit mode. And you can see it defaults to the desktop, and that way you'll work in your desktop view as you always have. And this is the thinking. The idea here, the way we design this is I'm going to build it from my primary audience from my desktop, because that's still where most people are, and then I'm going to make whatever adjustments I need to make sure it still looks good on the other devices, or adjustments or customizations. So you can see from the little arrows here that we're going to build from the inside out. Anything I do on the desktop is going to be inherited outward to the tablet and then to the phone. So we have a new concept of inheritance. We've always had inheritance in Lectora coming down the title explorer. Things you do at the title level or the chapter level are inherited down to the sections and pages. And now we have this cross-device inheritance as well. Things you do on the desktop will be inherited to the tablet, and then things or changes you make on the tablet, those changes will be inherited or applied down to the phone. And as I click through each of these, the sample here, you'll kind of get a representation of how that's going to work. So changes I make on the desktop are going to affect the tablet. Changes I make on the tablet will affect the phone. Now our tablet in landscape mode and our desktop, they're going to be the same. You won't see a difference in there because they have essentially the same aspect ratio and nearly the same size. We implemented that back with version 11 of Lectora to sort of make it easy to use both. But as you see, if I come down to the phone in landscape, things get scaled down a little bit more. Everything is automatically adjusted by Lectora to accommodate that. Now you may be wondering, or if you're a Captivate user, you may also be wondering, how do we manage the page breaks? Well, what we do in Lectora is unique. We decided that as an instructional designer, I want to build instruction for my learners. I don't want to have to worry about what device they're going to be using. I don't want to have to survey my audience, and frankly, new devices come out every day, especially now at the holiday season, right? So I don't want to have to worry about setting a breakpoint. So what we do in Lectora is under the hood, we identify what type of device that user is using. So it doesn't matter whether it's an iPhone or an Android phone or a Windows phone. It doesn't matter if it's a little one or a big one. We will automatically detect that and apply this, in this case, phone landscape experience to that device, regardless of the size of the device, regardless of the type of device. We will always make it fit. Same thing on the tablet side. Doesn't matter which tablet they're using, we will adjust the content so that it fits on that screen. So here, as I just walk through, you can see that any change I make here is going to affect my phone, and down here's my phone size. And you can kind of get an idea from the size of the picture and the size of the text how things are going to adjust a little bit as we go from device to device. Now this is a little simulation I built, but of course in a moment we'll actually open up the interface and play with it. Now you'll notice that the image got a little bit smaller. So that's what we call scaling. What we're going to do, Lectora 16 will automatically scale your images based on the width of the device in which it's being used. So it'll proportionately scale it. So if it's a little bit larger here, and whatever this width is relative to the width of the desktop, it'll shrink down when it comes to this device, because the width of my phone in landscape mode is narrower than the width of my tablet or the width of my desktop. Same thing coming back across the other way as well. The other thing that Lectora will automatically do is it will reposition or adjust your text. So going to the landscape side, you'll see where my text is here, and it's going to shrink the text block a little bit so it fits on the page, which in this case causes it to wrap just a little bit. On the portrait side, we have a lot more vertical space, so we're going to maintain that Y position, and therefore things can stay spaced out a little bit more, so there are fewer adjustments and customizations that you'll need to make. So this is the way, in general, that responsive course design works in Lectora. Every time you add an object, it gets added to your title explorer, same as always, which means it's going to show up in all of your views. If by chance you don't want something to show up in a view, you can just move it off to the side, and it'll be out of this view. Won't affect the other views. It'll still be there in those as well. We'll play with that a little bit too. So let's talk about some of the customizations you can make. I already mentioned that you can move objects around a little bit or take something off the page. But one thing you may have noticed here, even though I shrunk down the size of the image, you may have noticed that the text didn't actually change size. And that's for readability purposes. We decided that we are not going to change the size of your text in your text block automatically. We don't want it to shrink down to where it's too small. So instead, what we do is we shrink the size of the text block, the width of the text block, and then expand the text block so it still shows all your text. That keeps it pretty readable. But it's Lectora, and as you know in Lectora, we've always allowed you to do customizations, and we will in this case as well. So let me talk a little bit about text scaling versus just object scaling. All right, so here's a quick little sample screenshot I took. Here on my desktop, this is what my text looks like. And then over on my tablet in portrait mode, you'll see it's a little more narrow and elongated. Okay. Now what I did, I wanted that text to appear bigger on my tablet for whatever reason, bigger, smaller. And we've implemented this feature called text scaling now. So it's not available on the desktop view because on the desktop it's just your desktop and you do what you want to do. But in the other views, the tablet portrait, tablet landscape, phone portrait, and phone landscape, you'll have access to this text scaling that allows you to size up or size down your text. Now, what that's really doing, to be specific, it's not changing your base text size at all. It's just making your text appear bigger in this view or smaller depending on which way you go. Now let's say you have a lot of text scaling. You've made some things bigger, some things smaller, it's all over the map, and you say, you know what, I don't want that anymore. I just want to make it all Arial 14. Not a problem. Once you change this value, this tells Lectora, you know what, cancel out all the scaling, just reset everything to whatever that value is. So all of these will go back to 100% scaling, and you'll be at that new value. So for each device, you can customize how your text looks to make it larger or smaller. But again, the text base will remain constant. Keep in mind, the reason we do that is because you could have text in your text block that's different sizes, right? We always do that. You may have a different point size for a paragraph or some bulleted text or something else. So by using the scaling, it increases or decreases everything in the text block without changing the actual point size. If you want to change the point size, as I mentioned before, changing it in the drop-down list then changes the font size for everything in the text block to that new value. Now, another thing that I want to point out while I'm here, you'll notice that this says Arial 11, okay? If you were to change it to, to Homa or Times New Roman, it changes across all devices. So we do not have it set up that you can manipulate the text independently on different devices. It will be the same font across all. It will be the same base point size across all. You'll just have the ability to upscale or downscale to suit your desires. And one reason we show you, by the way, what that scaling factor is and the effective size is so that if you add a new text block on that page and you want to match it to what you've already scaled, you'll be able to see what to match it to. All right, so all these things are customizations, right? Moving the size, moving the position of an image around, moving the position of a text block around, changing the size of an image, changing the size of a text block, changing the size of the text within the text block. All of these sorts of customizations are possible, which is the benefit of responsive course design. You can do all this in one title and only have one place to go to do this. Now, when you do that, what happens is we create what we call an override. So an override says, I'm no longer accepting for this object what Lectora would automatically give me based on my desktop to tablet to phone inheritance. I've made a change from what I would normally be accepting. Now, not all object properties are overridable. For example, if you change the background color of a text block, it's going to change that across all views. That is not overridable. But if you change the position of a text block on one page versus on another, that is overridable. So that brings in the question, how do I know what is overridable and what I have actually overridden. And as you can see on my little sample, we've made that apparent for you as well. So you'll notice on your properties ribbon that things are a little bit different from a color standpoint. Any property that's in color, any property label, let me say it differently, that's in color versus your normal black labels, any property label that's in color means that property is an overridable property for the object. It will appear in blue if it's an overridable property that has not been overridden. It will appear in green if it's an overridable property that you have in fact made an override to on the tablet. And it will appear in orange if it's a property that's overridable that you made a unique change to on the phone. So in this little example, you can see that offset from right and offset from bottom are overridable, but they have not been overridden. Neither has been overridden. As opposed to the size of the image, the width and height, you'll notice that label's in green. So that means we made a change to the size of this image on the tablet, and that change is also going to be inherited down to the phone. I could change it uniquely on the phone as well, but again, we know, at least in this case, that this change was made on the tablet. And you notice the X and Y coordinates are in orange. That means we also moved this particular image on the phone. So you can tell right away what's overridable and what's been overridden. And if I go back to my previous slide for just a second, again, this is moving outward. So if I override something here on the tablet in landscape, that change will carry down to the phone in landscape. It will have no effect on the tablet in portrait or the phone in portrait on the other side of the branch, so to speak. Okay? So changes you make here will affect this phone. Changes you make here will affect this one. Okay, so we can tell on the ribbon which properties have been overridden. The other thing we provided in Lectora 16 is if you're looking at the page, we wanted you to be able to tell right away if anything was different or if it was accepting all normal responsive inheritance. So what we did, you'll notice the selection rectangles or the adorner rectangles here on these objects are also in color. So I can look at my page and right away I'll see that this has a green adorner around it. I'll go, I made a change, some change to this object, to this image on the tablet. I may not know what it was. It may not be the position. It may not be the size. It might be the offset. I don't know exactly what it is, but I know right away looking at my page, I changed something from Lectora's normal inheritance on the tablet, or in the case of orange, on the phone. So we give you a couple of visual cues, not only on the ribbon, but also on the page, that you changed something uniquely, you created an override uniquely by moving or sizing or text scaling or something on that object. The other thing that Lectora 16 allows you to do, if you've made some overrides and you decide, you know what, I just want to put it back to how Lectora was going to give it to me, let Lectora's natural desktop to tablet to phone inheritance restore that, all you have to do is come over and click this reset button and you can reset all the overrides for that object, either in this particular view, in other words, all the overrides for this object on the tablet, or you could do it for this object across all the views. Okay, so it's at the object level. That's why it's on the Objects Properties ribbon. You can reset the inheritance for that object. All right, so I've talked a little bit now sort of in the abstract with this sort of demonstration. Let me go into Lectora and actually spend a minute in there and show you these things these things live. Okay, so what we've opened up here, I've opened up this Chinese tea culture title. And by the way, if you go out to the website or into the community, there's a lot of good assets in the community. This title, this responsive title, is in the community for you to be able to download and look at and play with and so on. And by the way, my colleague Wendy Miller, that's actually on the phone answering questions, on the chat answering questions, is the designer of this title. So thank you, Wendy. It's beautiful. All right, so here you see we're in Lectora. We have our 5 different views, our desktop view of this page, our tablet landscape view, which as I mentioned is going to be the same, our phone in landscape, our tablet in portrait, and our phone in portrait. And you can see they're slightly different. Those are the customizations or adjustments that Wendy made to make sure it looks beautiful on every device. So let me talk through a little bit about these overrides and things that I mentioned so you can kind of see where they are. I'm going to go back to the desktop view. So if this is our base view, our desktop view, you'll notice we've got text over here on the left, we've got an image on the right, and a little green bar kind of behind it, okay? If I go to my tablet in landscape, you'll see it looks the same. If I go to my phone in landscape, it's essentially the same, but you notice the text is a little bit different. The size of the image is a little bit different as well. So if I click on this object, you can see that this has orange rectangle or orange adorner around it. That means I made some change to this image on this device, on this phone. If I go up to the ribbon, I can see what it is that I changed, and in this case, you'll see that I changed the X and Y coordinate for this object. Okay, so it's not accepting the position that Lectora would have automatically put it in. It got adjusted. You'll notice also that the width and height, in other words, the size of the object, has not been changed. It's accepting the normal inheritance that would flow down, as is the offset. Let's take a look at the text and see if there's anything unique there. All right, I click on the text, and you'll notice it also has the orange rectangle around it. That means something was changed for the text in this view as well. And again, if I look up, you can see that the size of the text block was changed and the position of the text block was changed. I'm going to go to the home ribbon too, because you'll also notice that the size of the text was changed. So Lectora's normal inheritance would have had this at Arial 14 like that, but to make it look a little bit better on this device, we used the text scaling and brought it down to 13 to get that nice look. So that's what I mean by making adjustments to your objects on the page. Let's go ahead and look at another page just so you can see another example of this. Let's go to, let's try this one. Okay, here we've got a drag and drop question. And if you're wondering, yes, all the question types still work in responsive titles as well. Our engineers have done a great job making sure they work really well on the tablet and also on your phone. So this is our desktop view of this particular page. If I go again to my tablet in landscape, it's going to look the same. Doesn't have to, but in general, inheritance is going to keep it the same. If I go to my phone in landscape, it looks a little bit different. Right? It scaled everything down just a tad, and we may have made some custom adjustments. Now I'm sure we made some adjustments on the portrait side, so let's go over there. And you can see it's very different. Here's this green bar. It's a lot narrower over here. And some other things as well. Again, if I click on them, I can see what I did uniquely by checking the ribbon. In this case, I changed the size of this object, or Wendy changed the size of this text object, and she changed the position of it. She may have changed the text scaling as well. Let's see. Nope, that's still inherited. That's blue, so I know it's something I could change, but it has not been changed. If I go down to the phone, there are a lot of differences. You'll notice that this green bar is no longer off to the side. Everything's been rearranged quite a bit. So that's the type of customizations that you can make to make sure that your titles look great and function perfectly across all devices. And again, Lectora is doing that automatically for you by looking at the width of the device and automatically scaling the size and the position of objects to be as appropriate as we can, knowing that you as the designer are going to make customizations to how you want that content to appear. You may even remove content. As I mentioned, you might decide that you don't want all these pictures down here in your phone view, so maybe you do something different. So in this case, you'll see that they've gotten stacked and Wendy's created a little slideshow effect with them. Or if I didn't want it at all, I could just take it entirely off the view. and not have an image at all. All right? So those, now taking the image off here, for example, on my phone did not affect the image on my tablet or my desktop or my tablet going to the other side, right? All of this is still in place. All I did was create a unique situation by removing it from the view over here. So that's how responsive course design works. I think you can kind of see a lot of the possibilities there and what you can do with overrides and customization. Now, a couple of other things I want to talk about before I hop out of here. I want to talk about moving things across all views, because something that we found when we were designing this was that, you know, let's say, actually let me go back to a different page just to make it a little bit more obvious. This one should work. Let's say that I decide I want to move this image someplace completely different, but I've already created some overrides for it in terms of size or location or something like that, but I still want to adjust it. Well, it can be a little time consuming to have to go to each view and then change it again. And we want to keep your development time as short as possible. So we implemented this feature that we're calling CrossDevice moving and resizing. And what that means is, typically if I'm, you know what, I'm just going to insert an image. Well, that'll probably be the easiest way to show you. Let me just insert a brand new image. I think I've got one. Give me 1 second here. What's a good image? Desktop. Got a sample here I'll just use. We'll use this surfer. All right, so I've got this image that I'm going to position right here. I don't know why. Now, with normal responsive course design inheritance, it's going to be positioned relatively there on my tablet landscape and my phone landscape, also on my tablet portrait and my phone portrait. Again, you see it's scaled in size. Now, suppose I've already come down here and I've moved it to here, and I've come to this view and I've moved it to here, and over here I moved it, I don't know, to there, and over here I moved it to there. All right. Well, now I want to make some slight adjustment to that. I don't want to go to all the views and do that. So what can I do? Well, with this cross-device move and resize, what I can do, before I move it, if I hold down my Control and Shift keys together, then when I move it, it's going to move it in a proportional way across all the other devices at the same time, even if overrides already exist. All right? So if you want to move something across all the devices, even though you have overrides in place, just hold down the Control and Shift keys together, and then when you move it, it will move in a proportional way across all the other devices, even though you had unique placements for them. So if I move it up 10 pixels, it will move it up proportionally, quote, 10 pixels in the other views. So this cross-device concept works for moving, and it also works for resizing. So I can hold my Control and Shift keys together and change the size of this object, and it will also change that size across all the other views as well. So that's kind of a handy little feature. Okay, so now what I want to do, I'm going to hop out of this title completely, and we'll pretend we're starting one from scratch and kind of see how that goes. All right, so I'm going to just create a new title. Actually, I'll create a new responsive title. Now, there are a number of ways you can do that. You saw I did it from the file ribbon that time. Most of the time, when you're starting off, you're going to be on the Getting Started page, right? You'll be here, and you'll just click New Responsive Title, and that'll take you right into this responsive look. But you can also do it, as you see, from the file ribbon as well. All right, so I've got this new title. One of the things that you want to try to do, that I would try to do anyway, is you want to have as few overrides as possible, right? Why create overrides in unique circumstances if you don't need to? Well, we've thought about that as well, and I want to show you some tips, or at least share with you some tips that I think are a good way to get going. One thing that I would start out with is the design themes. These have been in the product since version 11. You have all these different design themes you can choose from. I'm just going to pick one here. What looks pretty? I'll go with that one. We have re-engineered all of these design themes to be responsive. So as your pages are longer or shorter or fatter or whatever they are, the themes will adjust for them. So that's a good way to get started. Oh, one thing I didn't mention when I was talking about text scaling. As your text block gets narrower on these other devices, we'll grow the text block, as I mentioned, to make sure all the text is seen. Well, if that takes it off the bottom of the page, we'll also grow the page as well, so that you'll just end up with a scrolling page on your phone. And we're used to scrolling on our phones and tablets all the time. So again, we've tried to take as many of those things that you would normally have to worry about and automate them for you. Okay, so I started with a nice theme. That's easy because now I don't have to worry about my navigation. I know where it's going to appear, everything else. The next thing I'm going to do here is I think I'm going to apply a page layout. Now, you've seen this before. This has been in Lectora for many, 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 many years. Okay, the ability to insert a page from a layout, different combinations of layouts. We've also updated this to now allow you to apply a layout right on the page you're on. So on the page properties ribbon, we can say, you know what, I want to put a layout, let's say image and text, on this page. Now, what's my advantage of doing that? Well, all of the layouts have been engineered to automatically position things well on the other devices. So if you have a simple title with like text and image or text and a video, that kind of thing, you don't have to worry about where things are going to appear if you use a layout. We've already managed that into the product for you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just paste some text in here, and I'm going to pick an image. I'll pick another surfer. Okay, so now I've got my surfer and I've got my image, and without me having to do anything at all, I know it's going to look good on these other devices. Now, it looks good. Does it look great? Maybe not. There might be some adjustments I want to do. I think that looks pretty good. You know what? It might read a little bit big. What can I do if it reads big? Well, remember, I have the ability to text scale, right? So maybe I'll just adjust my text, use my text scaling option there. Cool. How's it look over here? I'm happy with that. Same thing. I might adjust my text size here. So that's very easy ways you can make customizations. Now, I'm going to do an undo here real quick because I want to show you something else. Another thing I could do, and this is also a great thing to do, maybe I'll go back here and do it, is to use text wrapping. Let me just adjust my image a little bit here just to illustrate. I'm not sure what it's going to do in the other views here, but I'm going to go ahead and kind of stretch this across like this. Go to my text properties, turn on text wrapping. All right. And now you can see it's going to automatically wrap around my text, wrap around my image, so that it looks how I want it to look. Now I just went into run mode. I hadn't mentioned this, but obviously you still have run mode available to you. And for responsive titles, you can preview all of your different devices in run mode. All right? So that doesn't look so hot because I didn't change the size of it. Okay, I'll probably want to change that. That looks great. I'm happy with that as well. All good. So again, all I said I didn't like so much was this. So I'll come back here and maybe hit my text scaling. All right. Or change the size of my image, or both, until it gets to a look that I'm happy with. So that's the way responsive course design works. Now, with page layouts, as I mentioned, all of the layouts have been sort of re-engineered. You can create a page directly from a layout with one click, or you can apply a layout to a page once you have the page already established as well. The other thing you can do, and this has been in the product for some time, you can create a look to your page that you like and then save that as a layout. So wherever you place the text or your video or whatever, all you have to do is say, oh, I have it the way I like it, save as layout. But before you do that, you want to actually go to your other views, make sure it looks great, because when we save the layout now for a responsive title, what Lectora 16 is going to do, it's going to save that layout for all the views so that you can apply it whenever you want. Okay, let's see what else we can talk about. I'm going to run out of time here if I keep talking too much about this. All right, so a couple other things I want to point out. There may be times that you want to do unique things on a device, right? You may not want to show the same big image or something like that. Lectora 16 accounts for that as well. And one of the ways we do that is with some actions and also a variable. So let me just come back here since I have something on this page. Maybe for whatever reason on this page, when I'm in my portrait view, I don't want to show her surfing, I want to show something else. Well, you can do that if you want to. I'm going to add an action to this page, and this is all make-believe, of course. This is obviously a real title. But the new thing I want to point out is we have a new trigger called device rotation, which means if someone rotates their phone or their tablet from landscape to portrait, you can hide or show or play or do different things based on the fact that you know they rotated their device. So for example, I might say in this case, on device rotation, I'm going to, I don't know, change contents of my surfer ride the wave image, and I'm going to change that to, I don't know, this guy. I don't know why I would do that, but okay. So that would happen on device rotation. So let's say I'm in my, what is this, tablet portrait view. Let me go to run mode. And if I did this right, if I rotate that device, it's going to change my image. There we go. So you could come up with a lot of cool things that you can do, knowing that if they change the rotation, you can do different things. Now, the other thing we wanted to do, though, was not just make it a blanket on device rotation, do something, but to also allow you to have a choice. So, for example, I'm going to use a completely different example here. Let's say you have some really great exercise or a system simulation. You're simulating your system screen, and that is only going to work really well when you're in this sort of landscape orientation. The system screen just doesn't work well for you to simulate it in portrait. Well, you could do something like add a simple message, for example, that says, hey, if they put their phone in portrait mode, give them a message that says, please go back to landscape. Really easy to do. I'm just going to add an action, and I'll say on show a device, or I could do it on device rotation. I'd probably want to do it in both cases, actually, so that if it was already in portrait, they'd get the message, or if they turned it to portrait, they'd get the message. But you get the idea. I'm just going to do a quick message here that says, please rotate your device. Okay. Well, I don't want to do that all the time. I only want to do that if they happen to go into portrait mode. So we have a new condition that you can use, and that is the current view variable. Current view. Current view will always know what way they are looking at the content, what device they're on, and what orientation. So I can say if current view is equal to phone portrait, or if current view is equal to tablet portrait, then I want to go ahead and display that message. Okay? And if I go to run mode, you should see, oh, I'm not, my bad, I'm not in that device. Let me hop over to that device, to portrait. And you should see that message now. There we go. Please rotate your device, blah, blah, blah. And as I said, I'd probably want to do it, if it were my title, I'd probably copy that same action, and instead of doing it on show, I'd also do it on device rotation. So that way, whether they were on that device or rotated to that device, they would get that message. All right, so you have a new trigger, device rotation, and a new variable called current view. And by the way, here's an even easier way, right? Instead of saying current view equal to phone portrait or current view equal to tablet portrait, I could just say, how about if current view contains portrait? That covers them both. A lot easier. Okay, so that's a lot of the cool stuff we've done with responsive. One other thing I want to show you in that is, let me close this one out. And I want to show you how simple it is to take your existing content and also make it into a responsive title, because I know a lot of you are working on things now that you might want to make responsive. So what I did before we started this session, and let me see if I can find it, I created a copy of my presentation. Let me just find that and open it up for you. And fair warning, I've made absolutely no other changes to it at all. Okay, so here's the presentation you're looking at now. As you can see, it's not responsive. One of the things that we allow you to do and that we're very proud of is we allow you to take your existing titles and make them responsive. It is not a complicated process at all. All you have to do to take your current title and make it responsive, you go to the design ribbon, go to your title options, and say, I want this to be responsive. That's it. It's now a responsive title, and we're going to apply the scaling, and you can look at it in the other views and see how by default it's going to look. In this case, doesn't look too bad. I can live with that. Now, you notice my theme in this case has my offsets, so my buttons are where I need them to be. It's scaling objects. Okay, this background looks a little off in this view, so I might want to change that, create an override in this view, and now you can see I've got the orange because I did it on my phone. But in general, it doesn't take a lot of effort for me to make this title look pretty good in responsive mode. Same thing, I'll just go to here, the agenda slide. Now I'm sure my text is going to wrap funny. I would imagine it will. Okay, let's take a quick look. All right, so I could almost live with that. Maybe I want to come here to my home ribbon and scale my text down a little bit to make it fit a little bit better, or perhaps rearrange it. So it's not that there won't be any work that you have to do to make it look good. There will be a little bit of adjustment that you have to do, but I can tell you from experience already, it's a heck of a lot better than starting from scratch and building a completely different title for your tablet or for your phone. So I want to take a moment and show you how super simple it is to convert an existing title to be responsive. All right, now let's move on in the little bit of time we have left and talk about some of the other cool things that are also in Lectora 16. Oh, I almost forgot. Let me just take this link real quick and point out to you. But here we go. What I wanted to point out to you is here on the What's New page. As you're scrolling down, again, there are a bunch of videos and things out here about responsive design, talk about overriding, doing customizations, and so forth, talk about the device rotation in current view, the cross-device moving and resizing, etc. But I want to point out this right here, the quick start guide. As you begin to build responsive titles, you're going to want to download this quick start guide, and it gives you a lot of great hints about how things are going to flow from the devices out, talks about moving objects off the page, reminds you about the override labeling, the colors, and on, text scaling, and so forth. So this is a handy little guide that you can go to right off the website to help you prepare to get ready to go with responsive titles. Okay, so what else is new? Currently in Lectora, or prior to Lectora 16, you have the ability to use status as an action condition. You could say, do something if this chapter, section, or page is completed, or is not started, or is in progress. One of the things that was really difficult to do in that situation was to have that sort of multiple combinations of things. So with Lectora 16, we've made that easier. We've now added in the inverse relationships. So now not only can you check for is in progress, or is not started, or is completed, you can also check for is started, is not in progress, and is not completed. So in other words, if it is started, that means they're either doing it. I think of this more frankly as has it been started. So yes, it's either ongoing or they did it. So yes, it was started and it's done or in progress. Is not in progress, meaning they either haven't started it or they've already done it, but it's not currently in progress. Or is not completed, meaning they haven't started it or it's still in progress, they haven't gotten to the completed. So now you can use these things, and of course that makes it a lot easier to do things in combination as well. Quick link here to the Information Center, or the help. with the product. And I point out this page because if you come to defining conditions, it explains all that stuff very well as well. And what I really like is this little chart at the bottom that helps you know exactly when your condition is met or not met. So I point you to that and ask you to go out there and take a quick look at that too. It helps you really understand what's going on with those relationship conditions. That's new in Lectora 16. Also new in Lectora 16 is the ability to step your progress bar forward or backwards. So in previous versions of Lectora, you could do a step progress action and it would move your bar forward, 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 forward. But if for some reason you needed it to go backwards, you had to create a variable and do a set progress bar to go back to the variable. We said enough of that. Let's make it easy. So now your step progress bar action, you determine the direction that you want it to step. Now remember, this is going to be for custom progress bar where you've set the range and the step size. Okay, and you're just determining based on that step size how many steps forward am I going or how many steps backward am I going. Either way. But now you have that ability to very easily step your progress bar forward or backward. The next one I'm going to show you, I actually have to open up Lectora to do it because it's pretty ineffective without it. And that is inline variable replacement. So you may be wondering, what is inline variable replacement? Well, in the Chinese T course, you probably saw it. We've always been able to do a change contents action of text blocks to change the contents of that entire text block to some other information, and that other information could include a variable. You could also do that with display message, for example. Well, now you have the ability to actually type variables right into your text blocks as you've seen here. So you could pick up the student's name, for example, or I could come right in here into my table cell and say, you know what, I want to put the current date in there. I can very easily now go to my properties for my text block and say I want to insert a variable. In this case, I'm going to just insert the current date variable. Or if you know the syntax, if you're an old schooler like me, you can type it as well. Now when your course gets run, it will pull that information right into those text blocks. The benefit there, as opposed to the change contents that we've always had, the change contents action replaced the entire text block. This doesn't replace the entire text block, which means you have the ability to set the font and the style and everything for those independent items. So you can now, if you wanted that to be gold, you can make it gold. If you wanted it to be bold, you can make it bold. If you wanted it to be green, you can make it green, because now it's right in line with all of the other text on your text block. Okay? So that's a great new feature. I think it's going to come in really handy, particularly when putting information, for example, on a table. Another thing you see here on this page that's new in Lectora 16 is the ability to increase or decrease text size quickly. Well, Daryl, what does that mean? Well, let me show you. Here I've got my text block. I'll just take this, for example. I no longer have to come up here and pick. If I'm trying to figure out what size looks good, we now have these new quick increase and decrease buttons where I can make the text smaller with just a click or make it bigger with just a click. Now what that's doing, you'll notice it's changing the value here. It's just going to the next one in the list, but it's doing it much faster than having to pick the list and go through the list each time. So that is now available for you. Keep in mind that if you're in a responsive title, I'll just come over to here. If you're in a responsive title, changing the point size, either of these changes the base size. All right? So that's not, you don't want to use that for text scaling. You want to use your text scaling panel to scale the text without changing the base. If you change the base, it's going to reset your scaling and stuff as well. Okay, what else is new? Also new is the ability to publish to review link is not new, but what is new, if you haven't already heard, review link is now responsive. So when you're in review link, if you're viewing mobile content in ReviewLink, let me just log in here. If you're viewing content in ReviewLink for mobile content, you can now scale that content. ReviewLink will scale along with it. You can review your content on your mobile devices in ReviewLink. Also, if you weren't aware, by the way, ReviewLink now works for our Captivate and Storyline customers as well. So let me just open up this Chinese tea course. I'd open it over here. And, oops, what did I do? What did I do? I must have done something here. Of course I did, since I'm doing a presentation. That's how it always happens, right? You do something unexpected. Oh, well, we'll take my word for it. I must have messed this up before the session. But it is responsive. Let me just move this, and you can kind of see how it's adjusting things for you already, even within that. Let me pull this up and see if that works for you. Yeah, this is not a responsive title, but you see if I move the interface, you can tell that it's readjusting to work responsively as well. Something else I wanted to point out to you before we're out of time today is when you publish your titles, if you have a responsive title and you publish it, let's see if I can get one up here. This is. It's not good, but it's responsive now. So I'm going to just publish this title. There are probably a ton of errors. Well, maybe not. Once you have your titles published to HTML, you don't actually have to put it in ReviewLink necessarily to see how it's going to look on your mobile devices. We've actually given you the ability to publish your content out, and either in the preview or the full file, check it out right there on your browser. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my browser here. Let's go with Firefox. And here's my title. And if I grab the edge of my browser and I sort of pull it in, you'll see how it's going to look in those other views for a responsive title. So now this is my tablet portrait mode. And in a second, I'll click down to my phone view. Okay. So again, we didn't really design this title. I probably should have used the Chinese tea as a better example. But it allows you to just go in and quickly, by grabbing your browser, take a look and see how your title is going to look and function in those other views. All right, the last couple of things I want to go over today. I want to mention to you that Lectora Desktop is now once again compatible with Lectora Online. So we had that brief period with Lectora 12 where you could import things from Lectora Online into Lectora 12, but you could not export things from Lectora 12 into Lectora Online. Now we've been able to make those adjustments, and you can now export things from Lectora Desktop and bring them into Lectora Online, and vice versa. I do want to point out that there are still some differences in the products, so everything is not a 100% match, but you can get the things there and then move them around. So just real quickly, the couple things that are different. In Lectora 16 and 12, of course, you recall that you have the 4 states for the buttons: the normal state, overstate, the down state, and the disabled state. Lectora Online does not have that disabled state yet, so it's still 3 states, so you'll lose your disabled state for your buttons in Lectora Online. But of course, as we used to always do, you can still make that with an image. With the lines and arrows, with Lectora 12, some new shapes such as the cloud and the stars and the callouts went into place that are not in Lectora Online. So what will happen if you have a flat shape in Lectora Desktop, a flat color, normal border shape, we'll translate that into the corresponding shape in Lectora Online. If you have an odd shape, like one of the stars or callouts, or you have a gradient fill or an image fill or a dashboard or something like that, we'll bring it into Lectora Online as an image instead of as a shape. And the same thing with some of your effects, your rotation, shadowing, those sorts of things. As you do now in Lectora Online, you'll have to take those images and use your image editor to add the shadows back or the rotation back. But you can move your content from the desktop to online and vice versa. And then the last couple of things I want to mention, new with Lectora 16, is I want to mention that we've also we've added a quick tour and updated the click and learn title. So what that means, if you have associates that you're trying to cross-train to get up to speed, I'll just go over here to the drop-down list. There's now a quick tour. It's also available on the Getting Started page. It just very quickly does a quick walk through the interface so that someone can get up to speed in knowing how to use the product. What's up at the top of the screen, how the title explorer works, etc. Just a quick walk around the entire interface for Lectora. So that's always available. And the other thing that's available is the click and learn title, which is a much more in-depth view of the product, talks through a lot of different features, walks you through the interface and how to add items and building things out and creating media and adding questions and publishing and reviewing and preferences and all those sorts of things. Those are all here for you in the click and learn title that you can walk through at any time you want to as well. That's always available from the Getting Started panel in the Learning Resources area. And finally, because people like to know, Lectora 16 is also up to date with the latest versions of Snagit and Camtasia. So previously we were at 12.3.1 and now we're up to 12.4.1. I put these links here if you'd like to take them and see what's different. But frankly, the only thing that's really different is some bug fixes and a couple of minor administrative things. But if you go to techsmith.com and go to Snagit version history or Camtasia version history, you can take a look there and see what those bug fixes are or slight administrative things that were fixed as well. With that, we've come to the end of our hour, and what I want to do now then is turn over to Wendy and see if there are questions in the chat that we weren't able to get to as we went along today.
Well, lucky for us, we had two other people join us answering questions. John Blackman is here and Laura Silver is here too. I think we've answered most of them at this point, although they're still coming in.
Thank you, John and Laura. Appreciate that. I saw you pop in earlier. I'm happy to see that. Okay, so let's see if we can answer these questions that are starting to pop in. Does my version of Lectora need to be currently on updates before upgrading to Lectora 16? So as I mentioned at the start, if you are current on maintenance, you can upgrade to Lectora 16 at no cost. If you're not current on maintenance or if you're on a lower version of Lectora, you can still certainly upgrade. There's processes for that on the website, or you can contact your account representative. A number of different ways we can help you to do that. But yes, absolutely you can upgrade. Any chance of a visited state for buttons coming soon? Hi, Adam. Good to see you again. Currently, we don't have the visited state. That is something that is on the roadmap to try to get to at some point, not only for buttons, but also for other things as well. So we'd certainly like to do that. Hi, Diane. Good to see you again as well. I think John's answering that question. Is the main title static in size, or does it adjust to the user's screen resolution? I believe that's referring to the desktop view. The desktop view of your title is still defaulted to 1009 by 662, but you can come into your design ribbon and change your base page size as well. And then the other views will adjust accordingly, actually. Why the jump from 12 to 16? Well, there's a quick little story behind that. As Laura says, we wanted to be current again with the year. So, you know, we had 12. We thought about going to 13, but some people said, ooh, I don't know, do we want to go to a 13? I don't know. And then she said, well, if we don't go to 13, then 14 would be next, but now it looks off with the year, so that seems odd. We said, let's just go to 16. Everyone knows it's new, and everyone knows that if they're in 2016, they've got the most current version. So I think we've gotten most of the questions that are there. What I would like to suggest is if you have additional questions, feel free to drop them in an email to info@trivantis.com. That's INFO at trivantis.com. Those will get routed, just mention in your subject line, Inspiration Wednesday, what's new in Lectora 16. Those questions will get routed back around to myself or Laura or John, and we'll be very happy to answer them for you. So thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. I really do appreciate it. We are super excited about Lectora 16 and glad that you are as well. Wendy, John, and Laura, thank you so much for fielding questions as we went along. I really do appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a terrific and happy holiday season.